As representative of MemphisJewels.com, we're here with Mrs. Rose Fields. And Ms. Fields, we are very, very excited to interview you today and have you tell us, our readers of Jewels, about your success story, okay? So if you're ready to begin and kind of start with your young life and how it all started and began.
Thank you, Mrs. Bryant, for the opportunity to share with you today. I was born, I'm named for my grandmother, Rosie. My husband nicknamed me Rose, but I was named for my grandmother, Rosa Hurd, my mother's mother. I grew up in a little small community in central Alabama, a little town called Malone, Alabama.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you won't find that on the map, but it's now incorporated with Wedowee, Alabama. Wedowee is an Indian name. This is an area where many Indians occupied at one time. My father, W.M. Marable, was an entrepreneur there in Alabama. My dad owned a sawmill. He was a farmer. He had prized livestock. His joy was riding a thoroughbred horse that he owned. I have 9 brothers and 3 sisters. I grew up right in the middle of 7 boys. So growing up in Alabama was a happy time for me. My maiden name is Marable. My father was very religious. He had many talents. He played a guitar. He could sing. He was a great dancer. I remember him playing the guitar and dancing. And many times during our school programs, my father, especially at Christmas, my father would always be the Santa Claus. And he was named the guitar playing Santa Claus. So it was a happy time. My mother, of course, her name is Fanny Hurd Marable. Mother was a housewife, and she loved children. She, of course, you can understand that having birthed 13 children. My grandfather, I love to talk about my grandfather. My grandfather was, I might say is because he's still my grandfather. His name is Morris Marable. Grandpa Morris, as he was known by all of us, was born into slavery. Grandpa Morris was sold at the age of 8 years old, taken away from his mother and his other siblings. He did not recall his mother's name. He did not recall any of his brothers and sisters by name, but he does remember the day that the white man that bought him came to get him. He remembers his mother crying as he was taken away. So Morris, we're very proud of Morris because he went on to become an entrepreneur. He owned a cotton gin, which was very essential in those days because people raised cotton in that area. So they had to come to Morris Marable to gin the cotton at the time. My grandfather was a beekeeper. He was a carpenter. And one of the sweet stories I remember about my grandfather was that my grandmother could not ride. She had motion sickness when she would ride. And my grandfather would build little benches all along to church so that on Sunday when they would go to church, he would have to stop the carriage and let grandmother get out and rest a while. And then they would continue on their journey. I guess they had to leave for church pretty early.
Wow.
But that just shows you what a sweet person he was. My grandmother is from, it is said, from an Indian background. This, of course, we haven't been able to prove. But just from looking at her pictures, we kind of suspect that she does have an Indian heritage. Morris Marble went on to become a landowner. At his passing, he owned 160 acres of land there in Alabama. He was the first black man to sit on a jury in Randolph County. So we're just so very proud of our grandfather. One thing is significant is that at his death, the local newspaper, which was unusual, the local newspaper did an article, a lengthy article of his life and his passing. So my grandfather was bought by a gentleman named Erasmus Marable, and he was reared there in Lafayette, Alabama. That's in the LaGrange area, not very far from Atlanta. And that was when he received his freedom. He left there and moved up to Randolph County. My grandfather received his freedom because he had journeyed to the Civil War with Mr. Marable's son. And the son was injured in the Civil War. And so my grandfather took care of him and brought him back home safely. And as a result of that, Erasmus Marable gave my grandfather his freedom.
Introduce us to how you met Reverend Fields and then how you came about joining in with the Valentine Baptist Church of Memphis, Tennessee.
Many people want to know, how on earth did you end up marrying a minister? Especially those who know my family. We don't have ministers in my family. So upon graduating from high school, my interest was in business. And there were no business colleges in Alabama, to my knowledge, for blacks at that time. During this time, if you wanted to major in business, Secretary of Science, you had to go to a separate college. It was not offered in a liberal college, liberal arts school. So the closest location for a business college was Nashville, Tennessee. And I had a friend that was already there at the National School of Business in Nashville. I remember registering, and I remember how homesick I was. I had never been away from home. I missed my brothers, and I had to work my way through college. I would work in the day and go to classes at night. And this was hard for me, for I'd never had a job before. And when I would speak to my relatives, my siblings, my sisters or brothers, all I would do was cry. So my sister said to me, why don't you come to Detroit and live with us, and you can go to school here and you won't have to work, and it'll be easy on you. So this was a decision made. But before I made the move to Detroit, the National Baptist Convention has a college for ministers in Nashville. It's called the American Baptist Theological Seminary. All right, it's Thanksgiving Halloween time. And the ministers at the seminary had a Halloween party. Okay, Reverend Isaiah Rouser, came to the college to get some girls so they would have girls at the party. Okay, so I was among the group of girls that went to the seminary for the party. My husband had gone out on a date with his girlfriend, and they had had an argument. So he carried her home early, and nothing to do, he decided to come to the Halloween party. So that's how we met. We met on Halloween at a Halloween party. Okay, now the plans are for me to go to Detroit now to continue my education. I leave National School of Business and I go to Detroit, Michigan to continue my education. We did keep in touch. I wasn't too impressed with him when I first met him. I thought he was loud. Of course, he talked with his preaching voice, and I thought he was kind of loud and was a little older. And so I thought maybe the move to Detroit was, just this was just a friendly gesture that a time that we had gotten together, and that it wouldn't amount to anything. But when I get to Detroit, he comes to visit me every 6 months. By this time, he has graduated from the seminary. He's pastoring a church. Had a beautiful automobile, and of course, he was tall and handsome. And I had a second look at him. And so every 6 weeks, he would come to Detroit. Many times, it would be on a revival. He would come for a revival, and we'd have time to spend together. And so finally, he proposed. I had to write a letter. At that time, you had to get permission from your parents. So he writes a letter to my mother, and mother, of course, is a little apprehensive about me getting married so young. But if you knew my husband, you know that he was very convincing. And so my mother writes a letter then, and we able to get married. Had to have the letter to take to the license bureau. So I come to Memphis in December of 1957.
Wow.
I come to Memphis, my first plane ride, and I met at the airport with a delegation of close friends and members. A photographer, Miss Bryant.
Really?
It was, a wonderful, wonderful time. And so it has not dawned on me yet what's in store for me as a minister's wife. So we get married December the 18th, right, during the holidays. My first visit to Valentine Baptist Church was the Sunday before Christmas in 1957. Okay, so it's Sunday morning. I go to church for the first time to meet the congregation. And I walk in, and there's all these people. I don't recall ever discussing with them what it would be like as a minister's wife. I just, the Lord just shielded me, because if I had known, I'm almost sure I would never have married him. But I go in, and there's all these people, and everybody's looking at me, and I thought, oh my Lord, what have I gotten myself into? But the Lord always will send someone. There was a lady, Miss Fanny Campbell, a member of the church. Miss Fanny had me come up, gave me a beautiful bouquet of flowers, and presented me to the church. And she said to the congregation, she said, Mrs. Fields is just getting married, she's very young, she's going to have time to be adjusted. And she said, I don't want you all to ask her to do anything for the next year. For the next year, we want her just to come to church, be comfortable, not nervous about having to come before a crowd. She has to get used to all of this. So I always remembered and loved Miss Fanny Campbell because she was just an angel to me at the time. So this was began my journey with the Valentine Baptist Church. At this time, it was just a big, happy family, as it is now. It was so many members, choirs. I guess we must have had 3 or 4 choirs, And my husband was well known. He was traveling, and whenever we would go out for visiting churches, oh, the entire church would go. It was just a happy time in our lives growing up, being a part of the Valentine Baptist Church. And then when my daughter was born, they just took her over. She was just a church baby. So many wonderful people I have met there at Valentine have impacted my life. So many wonderful members, dedicated, faithful, that gave their all for the church. Valentine has been a great ministry in that area of where we located, in the former location and in our present location. And we just praise the Lord for having had the experience of working with His people. I have so many ministers' wives come to me for counseling and wanting to know, how do you deal with the position of a minister's wife? I tell them, well, you just the wife like all other wives. One thing I've learned and really helped me along the way is to treat people like you want to be treated. A minister's wife has to love those who don't particularly show love for you. And sometimes this can be kind of challenging. Love your husband. Try to do all you can to assist him, not taking over his position, not being jealous of the love that the members have for him. I learned to love the congregation like my husband loved them. I loved them unconditionally. No matter how I was treated, I still showed love. You do a lot of sacrificing when you're a minister's wife. We've had to live. When I married him, he was making a salary of $75 a week. And you can't do much with $75 now, and of course you couldn't do very much back then. But that was his salary, $75 a week, and we managed to live on that. Believe it or not, we were buying a house, a car, and had a baby in the midst of all of that. You do a lot of sacrifice, and we've given up salaries. He's come home many times and had to leave his salary at church because bills had to be paid. So you do a lot of sacrificing, but the Lord has a way of making up for all of the sacrifices that you go through.
So, Ms. Fields, I see that you were at Valentine for several years with your husband, and I did find out that you had been at, or your husband had been at the Eastern Star, so we, want to acknowledge that as well. But can you tell us briefly what life has taught you throughout the years?
Yes, Miss Bryant, and let's go back. Thank you for reminding me of Eastern Star Baptist Church. How we became, my husband became pastor of Eastern Star at the passing of his father, W.M. Fields Sr., who was a great gospel preacher, well known locally and nationally. He was an evangelist across the country. Spoke many times as guest speaker in the National Baptist Convention. Pastor Fields passed away, and the members of Eastern Star called my husband to be the pastor. And we were there, I'm thinking maybe 20 years, if not close to it. 20 years serving those people, a wonderful, wonderful group of people. Eastern Star Baptist Church is a great historic church in the Memphis community, and located there on the corner of Cleveland and W.M. Fields Boulevard, a street that's named for my husband and for his father. A wonderful, faithful group of people that has shown me love down through the years. A group of people that even now, my husband's been gone for 30 years, and 32 to be exact. And those people are so generous. I have never missed a love offering. Not 1 month since my husband's been gone, they have contributed to my livelihood for 32 years. And I'm just grateful to them, for them, to them for that. A very benevolent group of people.
Wow, that's awesome. That's awesome. What has life taught you?
Life has taught me that it's filled with challenges. You have some good times and you have some bad times. But I always say the good always outweigh the bad. Life has taught me that you are to love people unconditionally. And I learned that from my mother. My mother, listen, she would feed the homeless, and she didn't make a difference. She fed the homeless on her fine china. That's just how she thought. Everybody was on the same level. Life has taught me that if you love people, people will love you back. Help, assist, do whatever you can to help those that need help. I like to tell a story of a few days ago. I was going into the post office, and there was an older lady that was trying to bring in a little cart. She had a laundry, and it was filled to the top with some groceries she had picked up. And she couldn't get the door open. And I approached the door just as she did. And I helped her get her little cart in and held the door for her. And she said to me, you know, when they build these buildings, they don't think about us. But she looked me in the eye and she said, but you know what? She said, God will always have somebody to help you. And I thought, well, that's true. I didn't know this lady. I've never done anything for her. But here I am to open the door for her and assist her. My point is, if you do good, if you do all you can to assist others, the Lord will always have someone to assist you. Do all you can for those that you come in contact with. Not just those who of a higher caliber than you, not those that you expect to get a blessing back from, but just be kind and good and helpful to humanity, whoever they are. It doesn't matter what color they are. It doesn't matter how they look, how much money they have, where they live, what they drive. But just love people unconditionally.
Okay. Well, do you have any suggestions for a new minister's wife, just married a minister? You have any suggestions for her?
Well, as I said, love the people.
Okay.
Stay down on the level of the people that's in your congregation. Don't try to be above them. Always have an interest in them. Want to know how they are. Be interested in their religious growth. I always taught children, and I taught children because I felt like that if ever I was left at the church with my husband's passing, that they would be the one whose hands I would fall in. So I always wanted to be kind to them, loving, and so that if there was a time when I needed them as an adult, they would remember what I did for them when they were young. It does my heart joy now when I meet some of my students, Some have gone on to be ministers, great leaders in the community. And I think it does my heart well to know that I had a part of shaping these children. But have an interest in your congregation. Work with them. I've always worked with our congregation. It was no problem for me to get in the kitchen and whatever they were doing, serving, whatever it was they were doing, I took a part in it and had an interest in it. Just stay on the level of your people. Don't try to be more. People will try to exalt you with the titles, the First Lady title. Don't get all carried away over a title, because loving people and being interested in them is what really matters.
Well, Miss Fields, this has been a wonderful, just a wonderful experience today to hear and be reminded of Eastern Star, your husband, and Valentine. So on behalf of Valentine and Eastern Star, and of course our readers of Jewels Magazine, we just thank you so much for allowing our team to come in and hear your story. Success story it is, definitely. You've gone through much, and we appreciate you so, so, so much. So thank you again.
Thank you, Mrs. Bryant. It has been a joy.
Okay.
And to know you and to work with you at the Valentine Church. I always say Miss Bryant is the perfect minister's wife because she plays the piano. One thing they always expect for the minister's wife to be able to play the piano.
And sing.
Of course, sing too.
But thank you, Miss Fields.
And she's so talented. It's a joy always to be in your presence.
We appreciate you so much. Thank you again. All right.